Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Alberta government is injecting millions of dollars more into our tech sector, including another investment into the University of Lethbridge. We have a special one-on-one interview with UCP Caucus Chair Nathan Neudorf, who discusses when more doctors are coming to Southwestern Alberta. And we see how the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team is bringing a message of hope to Uvalde, Texas, following a devastating shooting that left 21 people dead.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Alberta government is injecting $23 million for the development of a quantum hub at the University of Calgary. Now, it will work in collaboration with the University of Alberta and the University of Lethbridge. Quantum City supports the development, application, and update of Alberta-grown quantum technologies in the tech sector. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says that particular sector is booming right now.
We now see greater momentum in Alberta's tech sector than ever before, one of the fastest growing tech sectors anywhere in North America, part of a broader, exciting story of Alberta's economic recovery. Last year, we saw 33% growth in Alberta manufacturing. Exports were up by 56% to the highest year ever. Of course, our film and television industry is booming with a tenfold increase of investment and activity in that sector. You can't find studio space in Calgary. Our aviation sector is booming with new airlines anchoring here in Alberta. The tourism industry, of course, is recovering.
For the first time since the pandemic began, the Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization hosted their annual Live Well Showcase. As BCN's Angela Stewart explains now, the event featured some special dignitaries to mark Seniors Week here in Alberta.
We're so excited to have a full load of exhibitors.
The annual Live Well Showcase made a triumphant return to our city with a ribbon-cutting ceremony kicking off the event to mark the grand reopening.
We're really excited because it's the 9th Live Well Showcase. We have some great organizers that help LSU put the show on.
Some special dignitaries took part, including Minister of Seniors and Housing Josephine Pon, East MLA Nathan Neudorf, and Deputy Mayor Jen Schmidt-Rempel.
We want to make sure we show appreciation for all the seniors who build this beautiful, beautiful province for us, and also make the contribution and continue to contribute in our community.
Alberta has proclaimed the first week of June as Seniors Week. Minister Pon, who has been making her way around Alberta to mark the week, says the government is committed to hearing the concerns of seniors and will continue to provide a helping hand.
For me, is I want to talk to the people. I want to talk to organizers. I want to talk to the people that what they think about what they need for the seniors, what we can improve, and listen to them.
It's really nice for them to see the new technology and what's available.
Over 70 vendors packed the Fritz Sick Memorial Center, and one exhibitor who has been a part of the event since the beginning is the Lethbridge Hearing Center.
I opened Lethbridge Hearing Center 13 years ago, and 12 years ago for the first senior show, we were part of it. It's so nice to have the chance to meet different people in the community and tell them about what options are.
Besides the vendors, the show is also a fundraising opportunity for LSCO, something the organization says is super important for them.
One is that we get seniors out to find out the latest information on things that affect their lives. Two, we get people into LSCO and they can see more of what we do. And that's part of the community work that we do for LSCO.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
A $1 million orthopedic robot has made its way to our city. It's part of that Live Well Showcase show. Now, the robot is referred to as Mako technology. It is a new treatment option for those who suffer from arthritis or who had an injury to a hip or knee. An orthopedic surgeon in Lethbridge who demoed the robot explains how it operates.
When we do a knee replacement or a hip replacement, we have jigs or we have certain landmarks that we use to make the cuts. But a lot of it has potential for human error. So a robot potentially can limit those types of errors and be very, very precise. So if we're making a cut and we want it to be exactly 5 degrees, if a human is just sort of using a jig or something, they might be off by 1 or 2 or, heaven forbid, 5 degrees. They might be really off. Whereas a robot would be much more likely to hit the target of 5 degrees consistently over and over again.
So far, there are only 2 provinces incorporating this type of technology. They are Ontario and Nova Scotia. Many of us here in Alberta have been wondering where those utility rebates are. The province said back in February and March that we would be receiving help with our natural gas and electricity bills as inflation has made life so much more difficult. We asked UCP caucus chair and Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf if the checks are in the mail.
The electricity rebates will be applied directly to each individual's bill. So they won't see a check in the mail, but they should see that rebate of $50 a month over 3 months on their bill. And that should be starting as soon as July. It might take a little bit of time. There's a lot of electricity users across the province, but that's the start date for that. And the natural gas rebates are slated to begin in October.
UCP caucus chair Neudorf will also have details on when more doctors will be arriving here in Lethbridge to help address the physician shortage. That Q&A is coming up later in our broadcast. Students at Coalbanks Elementary School in Lethbridge used their best singing voices and dance moves on Wednesday night. A special event showcased over 200 students and parents at the school. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details now on the eventful night that highlighted a school program with a Spanish and English flair.
The Spanish bilingual program at Coalbanks Elementary School was started 5 years ago and is the first of its kind in Lethbridge. Over 100 students from kindergarten to grade 5 danced and sang their way through a number of Spanish-tinged music numbers for the program's end-of-the-year fiesta.
The kids have worked really hard to be able to put this together, and I think one of the great things is the parents actually have a chance to see now what their kids have been all about for the last few months, for sure.
There was also a ceremony where the grade 5 students from the program were given a send-off from their teachers.
And what's really awesome is that this year we actually get to say goodbye to our very first class that started with Anna. Right at the very beginning, 5 years ago, the grade 5s are going to be moving on. And it's emotional. And it's also something that we're so proud of. It's something of huge pride for us.
This is the first big event the program has been able to host since its Hispanic Heritage Month close to 2 years ago.
It's all about the kids, right?
Exactly.
How they flourish and how, we are in awe of what they do and what they know and what they show. Trailblazers, we call them, because nobody's ever done this before, so It's pretty exciting.
The students in the Spanish bilingual program study 50% in Spanish and the other half in English. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The City of Lethbridge is reminding motorists to slow down and drive carefully in construction zones. There's currently work being completed in different areas of the city, including Mayor McGrath and Scenic Drive. City staff and the Lethbridge Police Service say it's important to ease up on the gas pedal in these zones, or you could be hit with a severe fine.
I would say one of the more common one would be motorists going around barricades. For somebody to go around a barricade, they could be looking at a fine between $162 to $243 for failed to obey traffic control device. And then the other main concern would be motorists speeding through construction zones. If workers are present, speed fines are doubled. For example, on a normal roadway, if a vehicle's let's say doing 10 kilometers over, it's roughly $110 fine. But if it's a construction zone that's well marked and there's workers present, it would be $222 for 10 over.
So it's more the near misses that we are concerned about, right? We have had lots of those and we keep track of them, and we have several a year that are reported by our staff members. There is still a lot of unreported incidences where it's like, oh, yeah, he swerved by at a speed, but I didn't feel I got hurt.
Lethbridge police say there haven't been any deaths at construction zones here in our city, but that the province experiences several per year in different regions. Police in Calgary are investigating the death of a man who was found on a road in the Stampede City. Police say they received reports of a man in medical distress around 5 a.m. in the community of Southview. They say he was taken to hospital where he later died. Investigators are trying to determine what led to the man's death and how he ended up on the road. A sentencing hearing has begun for a man who shot and killed a shopper outside of a Walmart store in central Alberta. 20-year-old Chase Freed pleaded guilty on Monday to second-degree murder of Jim Williams of Red Deer in December of 2019. RCMP said at the time that a masked armed man with a semi-automatic rifle shot Williams, who was 69, in front of his wife in the store's parking lot during an attempted robbery. Williams later died in hospital. The Saskatoon School Board is cutting teachers' positions as it deals with a budget shortfall. Officials say they expect to welcome another 300 students this fall, but are not being properly funded. The board-approved operating budget cut 12 full-time elementary teaching positions, 7 other full-time teaching positions, and a school psychologist. To help address the shortfall, the board approved the introduction of a $100 fee for families if their child stays for lunch. That is up to a maximum of $200 per family. Manitoba is providing more than $830,000 to add more post-secondary spots for nurses to be trained. The province says it will add 30 new seats to the nursing program at Red River College. They're expected to be filled by the end of the 2022-2023 academic year. Officials say the funding is part of a plan to respond to labor market shortages in the healthcare system that were amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic. The province has committed a total of more than $30 million to establish 289 nursing seats so far, with work underway to further expand training to meet the 400-space commitment made last year. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says Canada is pushing for more help for Latin America and the Caribbean to deal with migration issues and why so many are fleeing their home countries. She made the comment at the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles.
It is important to engage with countries across our neighborhood, and Canada is that unique country that can really sit down with many of the Latin American countries to understand their preoccupation and at the same time to find solutions. Obviously, migration is an issue. It is an issue for Canada, it is an issue for the US, it is an issue for Latin American countries and Caribbean countries also. Why? Nobody leaves his or her home because they want to. They leave because there's no opportunities, because they're facing poverty and an unattainable situation.
U.S. President Joe Biden was also at the Summit of the Americas. He told his audience that democracy is under attack around the world. Some leaders are staying away from the summit because the U.S. excluded Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua.
We meet again today in a moment when democracy is under assault around the world. Let us unite again and renew our conviction that democracy is not only the defining feature of American histories, but the essential ingredient to America's future.
Police say at least 3 people were killed and a number of others were injured late Wednesday after 11 vehicles collided in different spots along the heavily traveled Interstate 30 in southwestern Arkansas. Police say the collisions involved at least 8 highway tractors. Plumes of smoke could be seen blowing up from the accident scene for many kilometers. The cause of the accident in Hot Springs County remains under investigation. Deaths have begun in the Horn of Africa's most parched land in 40 years. At least 448 deaths have been attributed so far this year to malnutrition in the Somalia region due to the drought. Authorities are trying to find ways of preventing famine in not only Somalia, but also in Kenya and Ethiopia as well.
waxay dhinteen qaraabadu waxay ka soo dhimatay jidka taa qaraabadu waxna ka soo dhamaatay qaraabada jid ay ku jirtaa lug boor garaacta ma haysteen anaga taa soo lugayni anaga ilmaha ku aan haas qoorna ku soo tagay aan soo lugayna baawariyax ma ku soo bixiyay ay soo raacni ay soo saareen waa miyaha anaga wax ma haysan.
Injured Ukrainian soldiers and civilians have been brought to various clinics in a key eastern Ukrainian city as fighting with Russian forces continues unabated.
Primarily, it's wounds that are suffered from artillery explosions, but these are our frontline fighters. These are the men and women of Ukraine who are at the front, facing the fire, facing the artillery, and we're getting them, and then we're getting the very innocent victims who are just trying to stay in the homes where they've been their whole lives, and they're struck by artillery. So it's very tragic.
A memorial site is growing in Uvalde, Texas, as so many are still trying to process their emotions following a deadly school shooting. The Billy Graham Rapid Response Team is in Uvalde, sharing how God is providing some much-needed hope.
It's been very emotional. I have 2 kids of my own, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so I came here to pay my respects, honor these children and their lives, and hopefully I can leave some of this pain here.
constant thread that I've seen or witnessed is a lot of emotions are being displayed from sadness to anger, because you're dealing with innocent children whose lives were lost in a very tragic way. But in the midst of that, there's a great reception to outsiders who've come into this city to be a part of the healing process.
A young lady from San Antonio driven all the way over here this morning, and she said she's been crying ever since she heard about it. She had to come. And I said, okay, God brought you here. So we prayed and just for God to hold her and comfort her and help her through this time.
Chaplains here with Billy Graham's, that's amazing, because in this time we need to pull together and just support everybody in any way possible. God is hope. Jesus is hope. And right now, that is what this community needs, is hope that things will get better.
Hopefully they get better very soon. Well, our weather has been better lately. Lots of sunshine and warm temperatures, and those warm summer-like days will continue for the next few days. A full look at the big weather picture is on deck. We had a mixture of sun and cloud today and got up to the 20s, which is quite nice. Tonight it should be mainly cloudy with a low near 13. Friday even warmer with a high near 25. A nice weekend is shaping up so far. It should also be 25 degrees on Saturday, mainly sunny, and 24 on Sunday. Now a low pressure system returns on Monday, bringing clouds, showers, and a high of only 16. Rain at 17 degrees is on tap for Tuesday. The rain cloud should clear out on Wednesday, and we should get up to 21 degrees. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 22 degrees and an average low of 8. The record high was 33 degrees set back in 1956, and the record low was only 2 degrees in 1950. The sun rose at 5:24 and set at 9:37. Let's see how Friday's shaping up across our home and native land. Expect rain and a high of 15 degrees in Victoria, a chance of showers developing at 16 for Vancouver. Overcast and 23 degrees for Edmonton. Partly cloudy and 23 as well for Calgary. A slight chance of showers and 26 degrees for Regina on Friday. Showers at 24 for Saskatoon. Sunshine at 26 is on tap for Winnipeg. In the central part of the country, you should see increasing cloudiness and 22 in Toronto. A chance of a thunder shower and 21 in Ottawa. Rain at 20 degrees in Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect rain at 22 in Fredericton. Clearing at 22 degrees as well in Halifax. Just a few clouds and 21 in Charlottetown. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect periods of rain and a high of only 12 degrees on Friday. The Bank of Canada says high household debt and increasing house prices have slowed economic growth. It says rising interest rates meant to counter soaring inflation increases the chances of households having to divert consumer spending toward debt repayments. The bank also says strong growth in house prices boosted the economy in the short term, but in the midterm, it could weigh on economic growth. It says the trends have increased the probability of negative growth in the first quarter of 2024 to 15%. Transat AT says its second quarter loss has widened from $69.6 million last year to $98.3 million this year. The Montreal-based tour company says results were weighed down by skyrocketing fuel prices. Company officials did say, however, that it is recovering from the pandemic with revenue for the quarter soaring to $358.2 million. For the same quarter last year, it was just $7.6 million. Transat said it has implemented a fuel hedging program to protect it against huge increases during the summer, and sales are going well as consumers have accepted the higher prices. Canadian fertilizer producer Nutrien has announced plans to increase its potash production capacity to 18 million tons a year by the year 2025. The Saskatoon-based company says that represents an increase of 40% compared with 2020 production. Nutrien is already the world's largest potash producer and says the move is due to the uncertainty of supply from Eastern Europe following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It also says it is planning to repurchase an additional $2 billion of shares for a total of $4 billion repurchases this year. A number of Albertans have decided to go with green energy, including adding solar panels to their homes. Michelle Sterling with Friends of Science says solar panels, though effective, can also become a financial burden for the Alberta taxpayer.
Again, these are subsidized by other taxpayers, and those are usually the poorer people. So the person who installs the system, they might see some individual benefit, but it's an illusion to think that this saves you money when it ultimately drains the tax pool for everyone and further burdens all taxpayers.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Michelle Sterling from Friends of Science coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 228 points on the day to finish at 20,563. The Dow was down 638 points to 32,272. The S&P 500 was down 97 points to 4,017. And the Nasdaq was down 332 on the day to 11,754. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 60 cents to $121.51 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 26 cents to $8.96 US. Gold was down 10 cents to $18.4786 US an ounce, and silver was up a cent to $21.70 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $15.37 per bushel. Barley's at $10.08, canola's at $25.10, and corn is at $12 per bushel. Live cattle were up 23 cents to $137.05, feeder cattle were up 38 cents to $176.03, and lean hogs were down 88 cents to $106.98. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 78.75 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta government is injecting $23 million to create a new Quantum City hub at the University of Calgary. It'll work in conjunction with the University of Alberta and the University of Lethbridge. Quantum City supports the development, application, and update of Alberta-grown quantum technologies in our tech sector. So when will those utility rebates be arriving? The ones that Premier Jason Kenney said were forthcoming to help with rising inflation? Lethbridge East MLA and UCP Caucus Chair Nathan Neudorf will have the answer to that question momentarily. MLA Neudorf will also discuss when we will be receiving more doctors here in Southwestern Alberta.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. The Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization is looking for volunteers to take part in their Drive Happiness program. This program is to help seniors in our community who are facing extreme loneliness due to lack of accessible transportation. Volunteers will drive clients to their medical appointments, pick up groceries, and take them to important life activities. If you're interested in this opportunity and for more information, call 403-332-4320 or email volunteer@volunteerlethbridge.com. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a nonprofit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. For more information, call 403-380-6338 or visit their website, lethbridgelegalguidance.ca. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
UCP Caucus Chair Nathan Neudorf announced recently that he will not be seeking the leadership of the UCP. 4 other candidates have already put their names forward, including former Finance Minister Travis Taves, former Wild Rose Party leaders Brian Jean and Daniel Smith, and independent MLA Todd Loewen. Nathan Neudorf joins us now via Zoom. Nathan, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Morning, Hal. Great to see you.
So why not seek the party leadership? I mean, you sit on so many committees, hundreds of other committees. You're the party's caucus chair. Why not take the next step?
Well, I like to do things well, Hal, and I have only been in this job for 3 years. And though I have a pretty extensive resume to date, there's a few more things I'd like to accomplish and work on and learn. And I think that needs to be considered. It's not just about the leadership today. It's also about leading the entire party in 87 constituencies into a general election a little less than a year from now. So there's a little bit of that networking, a little bit of that organizational development that I haven't quite accomplished yet. I'll keep working on it, but my time's not quite yet.
Have you officially thrown your support behind another candidate?
Well, at this time as caucus chair, I think that would probably not be helpful. I support lots of those individuals moving forward. I'd like to see that, but my focus as caucus chair, my focus now that I've decided not to put my name forward for leadership is to work on unity. So no matter who the grassroots pick, I can work with them work to continue to work on unity for our party, our Conservative movement, make sure the team is working together, and maybe prematurely picking a side or picking a favorite might not be seen as the best path forward as caucus chair.
Let's chat a bit about that unity here for just a moment. We've seen a lot of infighting within the party. What will it take to really unite the United Conservative Party once again as we head in towards next year's provincial election?
Well, I think it's going to take a number of things, Hal. I think it's going to start with listening, truly listening to the people of Alberta, particularly the Conservative movement. I think it's going to take time to consider those different perspectives with a sincere respect for different ideas and different pathways forward. It's going to take hard work, and I think it's going to take clear vision. I think whoever wants to become the leader of not just the United Conservative Party, but the Premier of Alberta will need to present that clear vision on how we continue to recover from the pandemic, how we move forward with economic initiatives, and how we respond to Ottawa and some of the work that they've done, which, to be quite frank, is often opposed to the direction Alberta wants to see them go, see ourselves go.
Let's chat a bit about Jason Kenney's leadership review. Just over 51%, that's not enough of a mandate to really stay on, so he decided to step down. He's staying on as interim leader for now until you choose a new leader. Were you surprised that it came in so low, just over 51 points?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't overly surprised. I have spent a lot of time in my constituency, a lot of time talking to people right around the province, and there was a great level of discontent. I mean, picking an actual number, that was very, very difficult to do. But I'm pleased with the leadership that he's shown, that he recognized that it wasn't enough of a mandate to carry on, even though he had won the required 50+1. And I think the path forward caucus had a great debate about whether he should stay as interim, and to provide stability and not multiple cabinet choices between now and a new leader being chosen was, I think, one of the factors that allowed him to stay and provide that stability. So we still have work to do, but I think we are becoming more united all the time. And that's difficult to do with the diversity of views that we share under the big tent of the Conservative movement.
Nathan, with Premier Kenney stepping down, will the party still pursue its own provincial police force and pension system? And what about taking the Trudeau Liberals to court over invoking the Emergencies Act?
Well, I think that will remain to be seen. I think a new leader will have some things to say about that. I expect it to be well debated during the leadership race. But many of those recommendations were put forward by the Fair Deal panel, and those are recommendations brought to us by Albertans, and they do overall want a fair deal. So it might be an adjustment in how we approach that, but there are some huge fiscal benefits for us to repatriate that pension plan. And if we're going to have our own police force, which would add many benefits to our rural areas in particular, and we want to see the RCMP continue more on a level similar to where the FBI and CIA would operate in the United States, that higher level of national security, I think the RCMP does very, very well. And this isn't about the members, this is about organizational responsibilities and that kind of thing. So I think those initiatives will need to continue to be pursued. How aggressively, what the timeline is, the direction taken, a lot of that will be influenced by the new leader, and whether or not we continue with that action with the courts. I think, again, Albertans expect us to fight for a fair deal for Alberta, and we need to make sure that we continue to push that our jurisdiction, particularly covering our natural resources, is protected, so that we can actually meet the needs not only of Alberta and Canada, but of the world, as we see with the energy crisis that we have right now, brought on by the war instigated by Russia in Ukraine.
Last time we chatted, you mentioned how a few family physicians would be headed to Lethbridge. It's a good thing because more doctors are leaving here. Where are we at when it comes to addressing the severe doctor shortage here in Southwestern Alberta?
Well, we've got good news. We've definitely turned a corner. There are 11 doctors hired. They're in the process of finding sites. They're in the process of moving to Lethbridge. They're in the process of setting up a facility. And AHS anticipates that many, if not all of those 11 should be practicing right here in Lethbridge by the end of the year. And they have a further 13 to 18 doctors somewhere in that process of continuing to vet them and interview them and work through their credentials and hopefully bring on more of them. They've been hitting a pace of roughly 2 hires per month, and we hope to see that continue. And that's very, very good news that we're changing that directional trend. So doctors aren't leaving now, doctors are net coming to Lethbridge, and we hope we can pursue that further.
Now, sticking with healthcare here for just a moment, a number of Albertans have spoken out against the UCP cancelling the insulin pump therapy program, which has impacted a lot of diabetics. They're not happy about it. Any chance that program could be brought back?
Well, that change has been paused. Minister Copping made that very, very clear to work through them. And the whole transition of that program was to allow for a more sustainable cost recovery and a cost payment of that program through private insurance, through other insurance methods that are offered to those clients. The great majority of the roughly 4,000 people on that program, I think it's over 90% were covered with that transition, but we want to make sure that everyone is covered. That less than 10% that didn't have that coverage, they didn't have that access to that. That's what the pause is brought in for. We want to leave no person behind. We want to make sure they're all covered, that they have access to the newest and best technology, and that they have access to the services that we need. So I think we're going to see that worked through and have the best services, the best supports for those people struggling with type 1 diabetes in the very near future as Minister Copping works to complete that program and make sure that everyone has the services that they need.
Now, the province offered more help for those struggling with drug addictions, Nathan. The Overdose Prevention app is now available across Alberta, and the Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Mike Ellis, says the Digital Overdose Response System, or DORS, has helped a lot of people in Calgary and Edmonton here in the South Zone. How does it actually work?
That's a great question. It's something where they can very quickly, right when they need it, as we all I hopefully know that when someone struggling with addiction decides to make a change, that's a very short window before they fall into old patterns or get dragged into situations that they continues their addiction. So this helps them almost instantly go through their phone and get the help they need, reach out to those that are going to care. They can find their location, they can get them in a program, and they can help get them the treatment that they need right when they need it. In some cases, even an hour or two later is too late to capture that desire to get that treatment. This helps that become much more instantaneous, and often within a few minutes, they're receiving the help that they need.
A number of Albertans, Nathan, are wondering when those utility rebate checks will be forthcoming. Now, the government mentioned that we'll be seeing a break on both our natural gas and electricity rebates back in February and March. The NDP's been slamming the UCP on this, saying, where's the money? Show me the money. So let me ask you, is the check in the mail?
Well, not quite, Hal. It's a different system than that. The process is at work. The electricity rebates will be applied directly to each individual's bill. So they won't see a check in the mail, but they should see that rebate of $50 a month over 3 months on their bill. And that should be starting as soon as July. It might take a little bit of time. There's a lot of electricity users across the province, but that's the start date for that. And the natural gas rebates are slated to begin in October. So again, when we start going into those colder months, we start using heat a little bit more, that's when we'll see the benefit of that adjustment in October and the following months as we get into winter, depending where the prices are at.
Yeah, we could definitely use the break right now, especially with inflation at over 6%. It's just hurting so many families here across the province and across the country for that matter. The COVID-19 pandemic also hurt a lot of Albertans, not just physically, but also financially and mentally as well. What mental health supports are available, especially for many of our seniors who were isolated for so long?
Absolutely, Hal. Yeah, we've worked a lot on that. And in this past week, we've announced several new announcements for treatment and recovery and mental health supports for youth in particular and for seniors. Just in the last day or two, we announced more than $6.3 million has been committed to 4 organizations to deliver mental health and addiction initiatives targeted for older Albertans. Some of that will be centered in Calgary, like the United Way in Calgary and area, the Society of Calgary, but other institutions like the Imagine Institute for Learning And the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council also receive funds, and they operate much more provincially to help with seniors who are struggling with some of those things for being really kept indoors that can really affect their mental health. So there's supports there to really help them.
Now, the spring setting of the legislature wrapped up recently. Now, you had an opportunity to chat with Jobs, Economy and Innovation Minister Doug Schweitzer about our province's growth in the tech sector and economic diversification. Tell me a bit about how Alberta is trying to rebound financially right now.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most exciting areas as we recover from the pandemic. We can talk about the tech sector, specifically the rate of growth of venture capital investment into our tech sector has been on just an incredible growth rate. Just to give you a few numbers, Hal, back in 2017, prior to our government, there was a $37 million venture capital investment in the province. In 2018, that went to 118 million. In 2019, after we won the election, it went to 227 million. 2020, 455 million. Last year, 561 millions in tech sector. And this year, first quarter alone, we're already at $466 million. That growth rate is off the charts, Hal, and we're really excited about that. We're seeing huge new investments in TV and movies and those kind of things. Video gaming, headquarters coming to Calgary. There's just so much excitement there that is really diversifying our economy. We're getting into the financial sector as well, on top of other exciting investments like hydrogen and different things in our energy sector. So we've got a lot of that diversity happening right here in Lethbridge with new industries and new companies coming to town, as well as we're building on our agricultural and our food production industries already well established. So a lot to look forward to, a lot of private money and really exciting times.
So let's talk about any potential cash infusions and investments here in Southwestern Alberta, specifically Lethbridge.
Well, we're still talking. Obviously, some of that is being redeveloped right now as we go through a leadership race. But I know I'm talking a lot about our healthcare needs, whether that's EMS, whether that's a cath lab, whether that's solutions for patient transfer. We know a lot of ambulances get caught up going back and forth to Calgary. We've talked about family doctors. We should add in their nurse practitioners and the great work that they do helping fill that gap. There's still more work to do there. And I do bring up the need for a third bridge. So there's some big target investments there. There's still some needs that we're working on. And it's not just about money, but it's also about building Lethbridge as a hub for services, healthcare in particular, but tourism as well, and a number of other initiatives where we can really lead the province in our trade, in our travel. We saw the investment in the airport and an exhibition park. So we're really building on the success of Lethbridge as a Deep South hub.
Now, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about this visitor's pass through the popular Kananaskis country in the mountain parks west of Calgary. If people don't have that daily or season pass, they're facing a $150 fine, and that's a big hit for a lot of families. Now, your government brought in the policy to help pay for the cost of maintaining the area. Any chance that policy could be scrapped, as the NDP said they would, should they win the next election?
Well, I find that curious position for the NDP to take. They celebrate the environment, we celebrate the environment, and they know that it takes money to pay for that. The Kananaskis sees several million visitors every year, and that kind of influence on our nature and our natural places. We need to pick up garbage, we need to clean bathrooms, we need to clean sites, we need to make sure trails are clear, and we're protecting our environment. So I'm curious as how the NDP would pay for that. Would they bring back a carbon tax and raise it like we've seen the federal Liberals and the federal NDP do? Or would they bring back the gasoline tax when people are at least able to afford it? I think $10 a day for a user pay to help maintain those areas is the best approach on a user pay system. And I think everybody wants to see our environment and natural places kept pristine and clear and cleaned up. So that does take a cost, and it's minimal at that. And I think we saw great success last year with over $10 million reinvested in those parks and natural spaces that we all love to celebrate.
Lethbridge East MLA and UCP Caucus Chair Nathan Neudorf, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal. Appreciate it as always.
There's so much happening in our world right now, such as the war involving Ukraine and Russia. However, you will hear in this next interview, there's been another type of war taking place that may go a little unnoticed. There's something that affects Canadians almost each and every day in a variety of ways. Here in Canada, we've heard a lot about green energy and the tactic of blocking new pipelines. Joining me now to talk about some of these issues between the Canadian petrochemical industries and the green movement is Michelle Sterling of Friends of Science. Michelle, thanks for joining us today from Calgary.
My pleasure.
Now, last time you and I chatted, we talked a bit about the money behind the efforts to keep Canadian oil in the ground and out of world markets. Has much changed in that regard?
No, people don't realize that billions of dollars of foreign funding has poured into Canada through these activist groups to block energy development. And we have a summary of the Deloitte report from the Allen Inquiry on our website. Oil, gas, and coal are global commodities. It's a very competitive market. So if the US, Russia, China, Iraq, Iran, or any competing commercial interest can keep our oil and gas from other parts of the market, then they get a better price and they get a better market share. So likewise, the label dirty oil was the perfect way to demarket the oil sands and push clean, so-called clean energy, making the public think that wind and solar could replace oil and gas and coal when nothing could be further from the truth, because wind and solar are entirely made from vast quantities of oil, natural gas, and coal, and they must have 100% conventional backup on the grid. So they're not energy dense. And I invite people to have a look at Robert Lyman's report, his summary of the Natural Resources Canada report, Inconvenient Facts for Climate Activists, because the real numbers show that we get huge financial revenues from conventional energy and its power and might, and we get almost nothing in return from the highly subsidized wind and solar and so-called clean tech.
There seems to be a real thirst or hunger right now for oil around the world, especially in the United States. And now the Americans, the Biden administration says we're going to be cutting back on a lot of the Russian conflict oil, but instead they're going after Saudi Arabian, Venezuelan, Iranian oil. Why not Canadian oil? We're their neighbors, and it's not conflict oil here. We're able to help out our American neighbors. Why not?
We have a report called Protest versus Green Trade War, and it takes a look at the tar sands campaign using images and messages in their own words. And it shows that there's really a battle going on between the Democrats in California and the Republicans in Texas. And so that's part of the battle. And also what's happening in the world is there's a lack of development of new resources. And Professor Samuel Farfari of Belgium is a chemical engineer and former official with the EU. And he predicted in 2017 that there would be an oil price shock by 2020 because there wasn't enough development of new resources. And people have pulled back their investments. They divested. People like Mark Carney have threatened companies with bankruptcy if they don't toe the line on climate change. And climate activists have driven off insurance companies and bank investors. So it's this lack of resources, along with the bounce back demand after COVID, that's affected global prices, driving them higher. And natural gas, of course, is also a market commodity, and it's always been subject to wild price swings. So we're impacted in Alberta, even though we have lots of natural gas here.
Let's talk a bit about fuel and diesel right now. Vancouver, I've talked to friends out there, it's like $2.09 a litre. A lot of my family in Southern Ontario, it's $1.85. Here in Southwestern Alberta, it's $1.58. I think it just went up to $1.73. What's driving a lot of the high price of fuel right now?
Well, again, part of it is the global demand for fuel and the shortage, because there's a shortage of new resources and shortage of product in the stream. You know, if we had been able to complete TMX, Trans Mountain to BC, it serves consumers, ironically. It serves all the consumers of that Pacific Northwest area. But, it hasn't been completed. And so prices are very high there because of the lack of supply. And of course, on top of that, the carbon tax and for the delivery of fuel, like millions of gallons of fuel are being delivered every day by a truck. And that truck has to be filled up with fuel that costs more money. So that money is, that expense is passed on to you.
Now, we're seeing that energy is power, and there are costs related to the energy and power we choose. Do you think there's a bit of a deception of how green and cost-effective green energy is today?
Yes, the billions of dollars of foreign funding that's been promoting green energy has skewed the public perception completely. I think people should look at Václav Smil's presentation to engineering students at McGill called Energy Revolution. It's more like a crawl. And he's written about 40 books on energy. And, we see ridiculously, Germany is closing its nuclear power plants, but it's reliant on Russian natural gas and oil. It's completely compromised in the Russian-Ukraine conflict.
Now, last time we chatted, we talked a little bit about Alberta coal. Can you give us an understanding of how powerful petrochemicals are?
We have a report that's called Why Renewable Energy Cannot Replace Fossil Fuels by 2050, written by Robert Lyman. And the cover image is one from an article in the IEEE, which compares the energy density of a cubic mile of oil to alternative sources of energy. And we use in the world 3 cubic miles of energy equivalent, oil equivalent energy in the world every year. And one of them is a cubic mile of oil. So you see that there are dozens and thousands of other forms of energies would be required. And in 1 year, the amount of energy contained in a cubic mile of oil for each of 50 years, we'd need to have produced all those numbers of dams, nuclear power plants, coal plants, windmills, or solar panels. And you can see that on the cover of the report. I was just going to say there's a good article by Michael J. Kelly about the energy return on energy invested in various energy forms. And one of those is that wind and solar do not return enough energy to even support basic society. It wouldn't enable society to continue.
So the return on investment may not be there. Michelle, let's talk a bit about how petrochemicals can actually help lower the cost of living. Can you explain that, how that works?
Yes, in our report, Keep Canada in the Black, we address this. We not only get the energy dense, reliable, affordable power and fuel from petrochemicals, but we also get a vast product stream of useful goods that save time, they save money, food, they save lives in a medical context. And the revenues we get from the sale of exported oil, gas, and coal finance public services and operations, and that reduces the tax burden on you. So our daily lives are also said to have the equivalent of 97 servants just because of the power of fossil fuels.
A lot of times when my wife and I make a decision, we take a piece of paper, we write down pros and cons, left and right, before we make a big decision, whether to move or involving our kids and so forth. Well, a lot of people have been doing the same thing when it comes to coal. We look at the positives and the negatives. Positives, obviously, it gets more people working, it helps the communities, which is wonderful. But the negatives, people are concerned about the Old Man River being polluted with selenium. It's destroying the landscape of the Alberta Rockies. Where do you stand on this here when it comes to coal?
Coal is the most affordable, most reliable, and most abundant source of fossil fuels in the world. And Alberta has extremely high environmental standards. So I think that the loss of coal for Alberta was a tremendous blow, not to mention that it cost billions of dollars for coal phase out, like $22 billion at least. Plus now we're importing more coal-fired power, but from where? From Saskatchewan and Manitoba, or Montana. And of course, some BC hydro as well. So we have to pay out of pocket for that, where before, coal is a resource that Alberta owns. So now we have less choice about what to power our grid with, as natural gas prices spike. Before we could rely more on coal, and now we can't. We just have to pay that extra tab. So that's the sad irony of the NDP coal phase-out campaign that advocates like Dr. Vipon and Pembina Institute said, we'd save $3 billion on healthcare costs. No, we've just paid billions of dollars for nothing.
Do you think that there's a potential that the Alberta coal plants could be reopened?
I really don't know, and I can't speak for any of the companies. I've never been in touch with them. On the companies and investors would likely be very gun shy because it was the federal government that granted Alberta coal plants the right to operate until about 2060. And only the old plants would be offline by 2030. So, the province overturned a federal legislation, and that makes investors very gun shy, blow to confidence in any long-term project.
Obviously with inflation right now, people are trying to find ways to make life more affordable. And sometimes people are thinking about putting solar panels on their homes. At current utility prices, and as they continue to rise, do these systems really pay for themselves?
Again, these are subsidized by other taxpayers, and those are usually the poorer people. So the person who installs the system, they might see some individual benefit, but it's an illusion to think that this saves you money when it ultimately drains the tax pool for everyone and further burdens all taxpayers. You can see our article on the solar farm for the village of Carmangay. The Carmangay solar project's electricity is 7 times more expensive than the gas-fired electricity that it displaces. And regarding the fact that it has subsidies from federal and provincial governments, a portion of the costs, about $250,000, is not covered. So Carmangay has a population of about 261 people. That comes to a subsidy from other taxpayers of $920 per person. And a similar subsidy for all Albertans would cost $4 billion. So we've got 2 or 3 other reports people should look at: electricity from the sun, reality versus fantasy, the true cost of wind and solar for Alberta, and what you need to know about renewables that the Pembina Institute won't tell you. These will fill in the blanks. And it should be noted that Pembina Institute alone has been foreign funded for hundreds of thousands of dollars to push clean energy, so-called clean energy. Don't people have any questions about that? I mean, in 2018, they got $500,000 from the Energy Foundation of the US, and the purpose was to support education and outreach to build a clean energy future. Foreign influence, and lots of funding from the federal government and provincial governments as well.
Michelle, we've seen a lot of these wind farms, especially as you drive out to Waterton, Pincher Creek area. You see the wind turbines everywhere. What kind of a financial arrangement is there between maybe the government and some of these farmers with acres and acres of wind farms? Do the farmers get maybe $10,000 a year per wind turbine? I mean, how does the actual business model work? Do you know?
That's a good question, and I don't know the details of those contracts at all. But they usually do draw in the farm community because it's seen as another revenue stream for farmers. And unfortunately, as far as I understand, farmers will also get stuck with the cleanup because the advantage, one of the indirect subsidies that a lot of wind and solar producers get, is that they don't have the same rigid requirements that oil and gas companies have for decommissioning and restoration.
So if energy costs are actually rising for residents like they are for all of us right now, are they also rising for governments? What are your thoughts?
Yes. Because governments also have to pay, they have lots of buildings that they have to power, and they often try to use, they try to greenwash other investors, perhaps the bond buying market, by saying, oh, well, the Alberta government is mostly run by biofuels, or the operations are, we've got solar panels on the roof of the legislature or whatever. But, the problem is this does send up the costs all around for operating. And then, of course, the unions have a cost of living associated with their union contracts. So they want and get more money. And, the taxpayer ends up paying and paying and paying. And we have an article on this called Taxpayer Death by Debt and Taxes, which is all about governments going into the renewables end of things.
So as life gets to be more expensive and there's more of a push for green energy, but at the same time, we're all about oil and gas here in Alberta, and agriculture as well, obviously. What do you see as the best path forward for Albertans?
Well, first of all, the public have to be far more energy literate. They have to understand the implications of these. So I hope they'll look at our videos and our blog posts and reports, and they need to demand a full cost benefit accounting, because that's not happening. These things are being sold as a great way to save the planet, which is, of course, everybody's desire. But the actual costs are not being presented, and we have to stop the addition of renewables to the grid in Alberta because it will break our piggy bank. We're financing renewable energy credits for some of the richest companies in the world, and Donna Kennedy Glantz recently had an article on that. So I invite people to look at the costs of net zero. We have one of our professional engineers, a member, sent us their comments to the federal government. It's posted on our blog. So have a look at that, because you really need to understand this freight train of costs that's coming toward us fast.
Michelle Sterling from Friends of Science, thanks for joining us today from Calgary.
My pleasure. Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.